All right, folks, welcome in to Pickaxe and Roll, brought to you by our good friends over at Superbook Sports. I'm your host, Brian Blackburn, at NBA Blackburn on Twitter, part of the Mile High Sports Podcast Network, and I am here with my good pal, Aniello Piro, over at Mile High Sports. We're vibing right now. It's going to be a great time. If you're listening to this on the YouTube side or the audio side, welcome. This is also going to air on the radio side in hour 2 of Aniello and Cody. Make sure to go check that out. Mile High Sports, 4 to 6 p.m. That's always a weekly show or every day of the week that they do. We all contribute here at Mile High Sports. We've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of great stuff, so make sure to check that out. We're doing some cross-promotion here today, and I'm very excited about that. Aniello, how are you, my friend? A lot of stuff to, I think, cover in hangover takes from game 2.
Yes, I am feeling all right. I think I'm feeling a little bit better than some Nuggets fans. I was telling you before the show that I ended up driving a buddy to the game last night, and the entire day he's been texting me about it feels like I just got broken up with. His stomach is in knots. He's not feeling good. I was on Twitter this morning. There's a lot of people not feeling good after a game 2 loss for the Denver Nuggets. But my friend, you and I were in attendance last night covering the game for Mile High Sports. And, we can try to be the voice of reason because I personally don't think that game 2 is the end of the world. You and I were talking about it. I think, there's a lot of adversity that Denver's going to have to face. So I'm all right, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right. I came home. I finished up writing. I recorded the pod, and then I played some chess. And it was definitely not the worst thing in the world. And I think Nuggets fans, obviously, you're living life and death on a cliff's edge when games like this happen. And I don't think nobody was really expecting Denver to lose because they hadn't lost. I think that Denver, the story of this game, and then we'll go through it a little bit in this first segment, was that they took Miami's first punch like they have against so many other teams in game 2s in these playoffs, and then they ultimately prevailed. And I think Nuggets fans were assuming by the end that they would still find a way, and they just didn't. And now it's a series as a result. But hey, Denver's had a relatively low pressure playoff run up until this point. So hey, now Nuggets fans get to feel the pressure like other teams so far this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I mean, I actually had them winning last night. Like, I'm a little surprised that they lost just because of how good they have been at home. And I know we'll kind of dive into why that happened and all that kind of stuff. But I think, the effort, I think, was questionable. But I'm kind of the belief that, maybe this is that wake-up call. I mean, it's been a long time since they've lost a game in the playoffs, let alone a game at home. Sometimes you need that bad taste in your mouth to, get you up again, get you moving forward. And so, there's a lot of different dynamics. But, it is the NBA Finals. And I go back, I actually tweeted it out from the Mile High Sports Twitter account this morning. The quote that Malone gave us right before the series started about this is going to be the hardest challenge of our lives. We're going to have to stare the face of adversity. I forget exactly what he said, but something along those lines.
Right.
And if anybody thought that the NBA Finals, regardless of the opponent, would be as easy, which I'm surprised it was, the first 3 rounds, you're tripping. So I'm not surprised that they are now staring in the face of adversity, going to Miami 1-1.
Sometimes it happens. And like we talked about, Nuggets, they just have had a relatively easy run up until this point. Now you get to figure out who you are. Now you get to figure out a little bit about yourselves and see whether this was all fake. And I don't think that it is. I think that I really believe in what this group is, but now we get to talk about it. Now we get to really dissect it a little bit and then see what they're made of on the road. So it should be very fun. But tell you what, let's go through kind of the game flow of this first game. It's going to kind of set up some of the questions that we have. Just rewatching the game back this morning, first thing that really stands out here is Denver. They took the first punch from Miami. Miami goes up 10-2 at the beginning of the game. It felt like Denver was climbing uphill for a lot of that first quarter. And then the second quarter hits and Denver's up 10. They're up 12. Like they're in a really great spot, even with Jokić on the bench. And it just felt like Denver had control at that point. And I think the Nuggets may have thought, yeah, they're probably like, we're good. We're perfectly fine at this stage of the game. What's your recollections of that first half and then kind of how it went for Denver?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it seems like the bench is usually the talking point of negativity, or, that's the unit that lets the lead dwindle down to single digits or whatever it might be. And, I was actually listening to last night's episode of Pickaxe and Roll, and I thought she hit the nail on the head of the bench unit did their job. Jeff Green gave you some nice minutes. Christian Brown, nice minutes. Bruce Brown, feisty, scrappy in the minutes in which he played. It was the starters that really failed to kind of jump out of the gate. And I know Michael Malone, that was a massive talking point for him, after the game about how are we questioning effort in the NBA Finals. And I mean, I agree in the sense of bad start, and believe it or not, it was like the bench was able to slap the Band-Aid on the wound. Like, Christian Brown came in and gave them just a ton of energy off the bench, which I thought was impressive to see considering how he kind of struggled in that Lakers series. I mean, now 2 games in a row in the finals, limited minutes, but in those minutes, playing good defense, hustling, and he knocked down a couple of tough layups last night as well. So, they just look disengaged. And I know Michael Porter Jr. is a massive talking point with some of the shot selection. Like I saw on Twitter, there was like that free shot of him shooting the jump shot at the elbow with like 4 players wide open around him. I thought KCP played his worst game of the playoffs last night as well. Just some bad fouls. They just look out of sync. And I saw the other stat earlier today that, what are they, 0-3 this postseason now when Nikola Jokić, I believe, scores 40-plus points in a playoff game. I know they lost the game against Phoenix and whatnot. So, the first half to me, they got out to a lazy start, unenergetic. The bench kind of made up for it, built them a nice lead, and they just weren't able to carry that over into the second half. But you also got to give credit where credit is due, my friend. Miami knocked down their shots.
They absolutely did, and it was a pretty visceral experience. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of things to kind of go into it, but like you mentioned, bench did their job. Jamal Murray, Aaron Gordon in those minutes I thought were pretty good too. They each hit threes. Jamal set the table pretty well. But as a unit, the starters were terrible. And this is kind of where I want to flow into it. MPJ minus 15 in 26 minutes last night. KCP minus 14. He had the 3-point shooting fouls, multiple of them.
It was bad.
And just he fouled out of the game and just overall looked very frustrated and rattled a little bit by the officiating. And that's just never a good sign when the guy who has your championship experience on your team is the guy who's getting rattled. So he's got to be better than that. There's no doubt in my mind. And then I thought that Murray in the starter minutes wasn't great until the end. Like he definitely picked it up at that point, but there were some things that I was a little bit concerned about. Aaron Gordon was fine. Hard to really complain about his night matching up with Jimmy Butler. But Michael Porter, I mean, we're going to have to talk about him a little bit more in the second segment extended, but it just feels like this was the other side of the coin where sure, in game 1, if you don't get all the shooting, but you get all the other stuff, then you're okay. Like you're definitely okay with what Mike is giving you. If you get no shooting and then you get none of the other stuff too, and he just looked flustered and frazzled and wasn't making the right plays. There was a lot of miscommunications there, a lot of missed rebounding opportunities too. I thought that those were pretty ugly. There's a lot there that Denver's going to have to figure out with Mike.
Funny that the game after we kind of get that unsung praise from Malone about you don't got to talk about Michael Porter Jr. when he has a great defensive night. It happens to be the next game that it's kind of bad all across the board, whether it was the offense. He also just kind of looked off on defense, missing assignments, not switching the right way. Just, I don't want to say disengaged because, I mean, there were moments where he looked disengaged, but he almost just kind of looked confused out there. And I think that's kind of the concern, I guess you could say, because we know that's not who Michael Porter Jr. is. And I don't know. Malone came out after the game and was talking about we can't feel sorry for ourselves. And I wonder who he was talking about with that comment.
I have a pretty strong suspicion I know who he's talking about, unfortunately.
So it's one of those where you need better play out of Mike. And he's the third player, and we talked about it earlier with Nikola when and I know we'll talk about this dynamic earlier, but when he's the one having to do the scoring, it really helps it prevents the other players from getting going with the way that Miami was, able to attack them in the bad shots last night. But the Nuggets play their best where everybody's getting good looks. And Mike threw up some threes last night, threw up some jump shots that maybe weren't the best high quality looks. And I think, whichever way you slice it, it prevented him from getting into that rhythm and flow. So he's going to have to improve into game 3 and beyond. What is he, 3 for 17 from beyond the arc? That's uncharacteristic for him as well. But whichever way you slice it, I mean, he's a max contract player. He's got to play better.
Just got to do it. There's a talking point about Nikola Jokić being made into more of a passer that we'll also expand a little bit more on in the second segment. But I just want to make sure to credit Joker. He was brilliant. He was awesome. Just seeing some of the plays that he was making, and even some of the plays that weren't converted as assists, he was making great passes that just didn't happen as a I think the team just kind of let him down a little bit in terms of the actual shots that they were trying to hit. It was more about Jokic being awesome and the team kind of letting him down in my mind than anything that Miami was doing.
I tend to agree. And, there was that video that went around after about, Spoelstra being asked about, like, do you try to make Jokic a scorer so that essentially, takes away the assists? Obviously what do you finish with 3 or 4 assists last night, I want to say?
Four.
So, usually we're used to him being 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, to get that triple double, whatever it might be. And, I think we've seen Nikola be aggressive before. We know that he can score. I believe he converted a couple 3-point shots yesterday as well. But you and I both know, Ryan, that the Nuggets are at their best when they're playing through Jokic and, everyone's kind of getting the share of the sugar. But, he was incredible last night. And that's the thing. He had that one kind of one-handed pass to Aaron Gordon that he kind of like reverse jam slam layup thing. It's just it's one of those situations where every time I watch him, and we're so fortunate to cover him and have covered him since the start of his career here, but he's awe-inspiring, and it's nice. Like I was watching ESPN today and some of these other networks, and obviously all the conversations on the Heat and whatnot, but those Jokic highlight reels are still in there, man. And it obviously comes up in a loss. We're used to it coming up in a win. And he doesn't care about the individual performance, but once again, just another stellar showing from a back-to-back MVP. And, that's kind of what we expect on a night in, night out basis from him now.
I'm not surprised that he put up a big scoring number. Like I think that the way that the Heat guarded him, it lended more to that. And he had to do it. Like he had to put the team on his back a little bit. And that's an important piece of this, but he deserves a lot of credit. He absolutely does for stepping up in that moment. And it's too bad that it came in a loss, like you said, but he's going to continue to do that. There's no reason to think that he won't. Like he's going to continue to be awesome, and it's on the team right now, and it's on Denver to try to create more passing opportunities and create more easy assist opportunities, because what the Heat are doing right now is they're taking away the easy stuff, and Denver, they're not converting the hard stuff. So
yeah, you saw a concerted effort to make life as hard as possible for Jamal Murray last night. Take away his space, take away his opportunity. And look, I know Spoelstra basically came out and shut down the notion of we weren't trying to allow Jokic to score, but I think that there was a little bit of that game plan of if you're going to, the Nuggets are at their best when everybody's involved. And you would think back to game one, and it's not the best comparison, but the Nuggets were able to live with Bam Adebayo going off, and he followed up with a great game too, right? I think Miami, hey, Superman can't do it all on his own. Batman needs his Robin. And by taking away Jamal Murray and taking away Michael Porter Jr. and really just, any secondary scoring with some depth, they force Jokic to be an individually great player, which he was last night. But the rising tide that raises all boats, didn't get enough momentum on that front. So the starters have to be better. Jokic was the only starter that came to play from the moment that the game started and didn't get too wrapped up in the officiating as well.
Last thing before we hit a break here, defensive collapse in the fourth. That was just it was a tough one. It was a tough one to watch. And I think the stat that John Schumann of NBA.com put out there was that he had it as 36 points scored by Miami on 19 possessions, which yikes. That's a crazy number. It's one of the most efficient quarters of the entire season for any team, regular season or playoffs, let alone just in an NBA Finals game. And Denver made it easy. They did not make it hard for Miami. And then some of the shots that they were giving up, I think, were miscommunications. They were bad efforts. They were not making the extra play. It was just like there's just a lot there. And sometimes even when Denver was there, like there was a three-pointer by Jimmy Butler in the corner over the top of Aaron Gordon. That's just one that you got to tip your cap to because it was a great contest by Aaron Gordon and Jimmy just hit it. But that's what the Heat are going to do. They are talented enough, I think, to really make Denver. They're going to have to work even harder than what they did.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think the game as a whole was just a stinker. Like whether it was the refs that got into their head early, they weren't feeling it before. I don't know what it was, but the energy was just off the entirety of the game. And it felt like a little bit there down the stretch offensively with Jamal coming to life that maybe they could, find that spark. But, it starts on the defensive end of the floor. I mean, you and I know that some people get turned off by Malone with his, big speeches after games and buying in on defense and being repetitive and this and that. But like I saw a lot of people, Eric Spoelstra, masterclass. Malone got out coached. It's not Malone's job to get these guys up to play in the NBA Finals. And I know if you want to talk about the timeout at the end, whatever, but like it's on the players to show up. And I mean, Jeff Green after the game last night, basically it's the bleeping NBA Finals. The fact that effort is even in question right now is a bit surprising. And if there's anything to be concerned about, it's that. Now, the good thing is you would think effort is much rather correctable than, say, different shooting or defensive schemes. It's simply a matter of will and desire for the most part. But you can't expect to win games like that. And I know that Miami is, a make or miss team with the 3-point shot. And, we saw in game 1 when they weren't making them versus game 2 when they were. But to your point, Ryan, Denver didn't really make it all that difficult for Miami to convert these shots.
Tell you what, let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to expand on some of these questions a little bit. There's a lot to cover here, just trying to suss out what the issues were and whether these are sustainable issues or not. We will be right back here on Pickaxe and Roll. And Roll, Ryan Blackburn here, joined by Aniello Piro over at Mile High Sports. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is hour 2 of the radio side of things with Aniello and Cody. We are trying something different here, trying to see if like just doing some interesting cross promotion, trying to make some things work and have some fun with this. Aniello, let's kind of try to suss out some of these questions here because I'm very curious as to whether these things are real, not real, what's actually going to happen for this Nuggets group and what we can really expect going forward. First thing I want to talk about, put on my radio hat here. Did the Miami Heat figure out something against Nikola Jokić? Did the Miami Heat figure out how to guard the Denver Nuggets? And is it by turning Nikola Jokić into a scorer only? Did the Miami Heat try to turn Nikola Jokić? I guess I have it turn him into a passer here, as it is on the actual graphic.
We wish he was a passer.
That's amazing. Wish he was a passer here. Let's change that here real quick. Did the Miami Heat try to turn Nikola Jokić into a scorer last night?
You put the Michael Porter Jr. one up.
Of course I did, because I'm a really good producer. Here we go.
There you go. I do think they did, and I know that Spoelstra kind of clapped back. I think it was Ramona Shelburne who asked the question last night after the game.
For the record, good question.
Good, absolutely. And here's the thing: I don't believe Spoelstra. I know he's talking about he's a great player. You can't just force him one way or the other. I agree with that. But if you're Spoelstra, and I'm not an NBA aficionado, I watch the games just like you do, right? You got to make the Nuggets. You got to make it so they can't beat you their way. And what did we just talk about in the first segment, Ryan? The Nuggets are at their best when everybody's getting a piece of the action. MPJ 3, KCP corner 3, Aaron Gordon lob dunk, Jamal Murray off the pick and roll, whatever it might be. If I'm Eric Spoelstra, and what is the one criticism of Nikola Jokić? Sometimes he's not aggressive enough. He doesn't score enough. He's not that dynamic leader on the court in regards to get out of my way and let me cook. He's at his best when people are playing free flowing. So if you're Miami, naturally you would think the kryptonite would be to slow down that flow. And we talked about it. They made life very difficult on Jamal Murray. The refs obviously got involved a little bit, but that aside, they didn't give Jamal Murray space. Michael Porter Jr. was taking tough shots. That doesn't help you build confidence. And I think, we just talked about it earlier as well. I don't think Denver's won a game this postseason where Jokić has scored 40-plus points. The Nuggets are at their best when Jokić has a 25-point triple-double, 14 boards, and 11 assists. That's when they're at their best, and everybody's getting a piece of the action. So I do think it was an effort on Miami to force Jokić to score as the first option. Make it so that passing was going to be a little bit more difficult than it was in game 1 and give Jokić the opportunity to beat them as a scorer. I do agree that was part of the game plan as well for Miami in game 2.
A couple numbers here for you. Nikola Jokić had 14 assists in game 1, but he only had 17 potential assist opportunities. So Denver basically, they took everything that they could from those assist opportunities. In game 2, 11 potential assists where he created a shot that then was either made or missed, and then only had 4 assists on that front. So not as many converted assists this time around. When I saw that number, you see the lower potential assists and you see the lower actual assists. To me, that does reflect kind of both sides of the coin here where, yes, the Miami Heat tried to turn him into more of a scorer. They tried to prevent him from getting the rest of the offense going, and they did that by pressuring Jamal Murray as much as they did, and also kind of sagging off, or like they stuck a little bit to KCP and MPJ. They didn't try to give the open opportunities there. But you also saw Denver miss the few opportunities that they had in those moments, particularly MPJ, just not as ready to go on the assist front as they probably needed to be. 23 total assists for Denver compared to 13 turnovers. That's a worse ratio than what they're used to. I thought that Miami, there were still great things that Denver did on the offensive end, particularly with Jokić as a scorer, but they aren't at their apex when Jokić is in this mode. So not a surprise to me that this is what happened. And I'm very curious to see how Denver handles it going forward.
Yeah, and to use kind of a baseball analogy here, it's like, you got a guy who loves to hit fastballs and you're going to throw him nothing but curveballs, or a guy who loves to hit lefties, so you bring the righty out of the bullpen. You have to counter. And that's what Miami's counter was last night. Also putting Kevin Love into the starting lineup. I thought that displaced some of Denver's game plan on offense and defense a little bit and kind of how they attacked Miami. But it's a game of adjustments, and I believe Michael Malone, the beauty of Nikola Jokić is he's a Swiss Army knife. We've seen him beat you with scoring. We've seen him beat you with passing. We've seen him, put up, almost double-digit boards, whatever it might be. So it's a game of adjustments, and, we saw Miami try to adjust to game one, and we'll see how they adjust in game two. And you bring up the assists, you bring up the passing, the missed shots, whatever it might be. I mean, it was just Denver had been playing so good for so long that I'm not surprised they finally had a stinker of a game. And I think trying to chalk it up to something finite, you can do it, but you're never going to get an absolute answer. There's multiple sums here that add up to the whole. And I think, to their credit, though, Miami's game plan of defending Jokić worked out last night.
Here's a stat that I was kind of surprised about when I heard somebody tell it to me. Denver had won 7 playoff games in a row. Like 7?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. I was kind of crazed by that.
I know you picked Nuggets in 5, I want to say, against the Lakers. I think I was Nuggets in 6. I forget exactly what it was. I was dumbfounded that they swept them. Shocked. Generally, I didn't think it was possible. I was like, you're telling me a team with LeBron James and Anthony Davis healthy at home is going to lose 4 games in a row? No way. And so it's just I don't want to say that the Nuggets have been over their head, but you brought it in earlier. I mean, they haven't faced, up until the NBA Finals, the most difficult competition that I think they almost had. You could have made the case was Minnesota. Seriously. And I just think
I'm gonna nip that in the bud and say Devin Booker shooting 80% in games 3 and 4. That was pretty frightening. I'm not gonna lie.
It's just one of those situations, where you haven't faced that adversity yet. And I think I'm just not surprised by this. And I'm trying to calm Nuggets fans down, because there's a lot of people that feel like the sky is falling. It's normal to have a stinker type of game. I think the thing that's questionable is the effort, which I know we've talked about.
Yeah, we'll see whether that's probably going to bounce back. I mean, and like we talked about, there are definitely things that can improve on that front, but it's just hard to think that Jokić is going to be held down as a passer going forward. 14 assists in game 1, 4 assists in game 2, still averaging 9? He's going to be okay. Denver, he's probably going to get up to about 9 or 10 going forward, and that's probably going to be where he lives. And if he has 2 more assists in this game, then Denver wins. That's just plain and simple. So going to be okay. Nuggets fans, I wouldn't stress too terribly much about this. And it's great to have this in game 2 versus having it in game 5 at home, where you're like, oh crap, now we're down 3-2 going on the road. Right. So Denver can correct some things, I think. Let's talk about this one now. We talked about this a little bit in the first segment. I believe in Jamal Murray. I believe in Nikola Jokić. I think that those guys have earned plenty of credit, plenty for the benefit of the doubt. I think that Aaron Gordon is what he is. He's an elite role player who sometimes is going to provide scoring, sometimes he's going to provide great defense. I think that KCP is an elite role player. He's going to provide mostly shooting and great defense. I think he was down last night, but he'll be better. Michael Porter, we're still trying to figure out, because there are times where it should have been relatively easy for him to make an impact last night, I think. I honestly believe that a matchup with Kevin Love should have been something that he was prepared for. and he just wasn't. And I think that Kevin Love was a plus 18 in 22 minutes last night. And a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of it was on MPJ and to an extent KCP for just odd decisions and odd choices.
You brought up the point just a moment ago, Ryan. You can trust Nikola Jokić. You can trust Jamal Murray on a night-in, night-out basis. Sure, maybe they have an off night, but odds are they're going to bounce back. We've seen that time and time again. And Michael Porter Jr., in my opinion, is the wild card, right? He has the ability, like, if you played like Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid or Pokemon, like there's like those special ability cards. Like when Michael Porter Jr. is on, he takes this team to a completely different level, especially when that mixes in with Jamal Murray being on and everybody, the whole nine. And I think the Nuggets can still win this series if Michael Porter Jr. struggles in some capacity. He just can't struggle like he did last night, where he was a net negative on both the offensive and the defensive side of the ball. And you and I were just talking about that earlier about, okay, if you're not making shots, buy in on defense. And that's been the biggest sense of praise for Michael Porter Jr., over the last handful of this season, being that he really is bought in defensively. And that had kind of been the question mark for him moving forward in his career, going back to the end of last year, coming back from the injury. And I don't know what to make it. I guess we can give him the benefit of the doubt because the body of work has been there over the course of the season, but you can't have that moving forward. And look, they didn't lose game 2 just because of Michael Porter Jr. It was a collective effort. But when Michael Porter Jr. plays the way that we know he can, he just takes his team to another level where the opposing team just kind of has to tip their cap. And, they need to see him get back to that, specifically from beyond the arc and buying in on defense if they want to right their wrongs in game 3.
As Jeff Green said post-game, it's the bleeping NBA Finals, man. You've got to be locked in. And to me, it just shows how different he was from game 1 to game 2 and how locked in he was. And I can forgive the threes. That's going to be fine. Right. But you can't let your defense waver. And I thought that he kind of set a bad tone in game 1 or in game 2, if I'm being honest. I don't think Denver ever fully recovered. And there was questions as to whether they would close with MPJ. And the only reason that I think they did at the end, although they tried to bring back in Bruce Brown, and I thought they made some hay there, the only reason was KCP got into foul trouble. So we will see. One more before we hit another break here. Miami's three-point shooting, it's been crazy. 33% only in game 1, 48% in game 2. I saw the shot quality chart that was posted that basically said, oh, yeah, they should have scored about 98 points based off of the shot quality that they were generating. And they outperformed by that to the extreme. Denver also outperformed their shot quality, but it was drastic in how much better Miami was on that end. They were just ready for the moment a little bit more. My question to you, do you think Miami's three-point shooting will cool off, or is this just who they are? Because it feels like this has been who they are.
They're a feast or famine team, and that's the dynamic, is a lot of those shots just didn't go in game 1. They went in game 2. It's a little bit of regression to the mean, obviously on the two extremes of game 1 versus game 2 in that sense. And now you find yourself kind of in the middle if you add them all up. And it's an interesting question because they've got guys, and this is where you got to give credit to that Heat culture. I mean, Gabe Vincent, some of these guys that are just journeyman type of players that get to this location under Spoelstra, under Pat Riley, Jimmy Butler, where they just kind of have that edge to them. And that's the thing is, after that game 1 loss, they weren't really, Jimmy was confident. Spoel was confident. They weren't shook after a game 1 loss. And so it's hard to say because it's just a matter of if they go in or not. One thing that you talked about is, I forget how the statistic that it is, but, some shots that went in that maybe shouldn't have, or that were contested. I would expect them not to shoot 48% from 3. I think that would come down, but you always have to be in the back of your mind, if you're the Nuggets, if you're Michael Malone, that these guys are going to make tough shots. And does Tyler Hero play, who's arguably their best three-point shooter at times as well? That's another kind of joker card that they have on their bench that they might be able to pull out, if they want to utilize that, depending on how he's feeling as well. So I would expect it to drop down, but I don't think Denver can bank on winning this series by Miami missing shots. They're going to have to do their part as well.
We will see what happens, but tell you what, let's take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the miscues defensively, just kind of where Denver can get a little bit better. And then if this is actually a blip on the radar or not, or if this is just a sign of things to come for the rest of this series, should be very interesting. But we will be right back on Pickaxe and Roll. And we're back. Final segment, Pickaxe and Roll. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Appreciate all the love and support on the pod. If you can, give this a like on the YouTube side. Subscribe to the MHS YouTube channel. You know we're always pushing out great content over there. And if you're listening on the radio, thank you so much for tuning into Aniello and Cody. Maybe we'll do this again. Maybe we'll find other opportunities to try to spice it up and create some interesting content, turning the podcast into radio stuff. I think there's plenty of opportunity there for sure. But I'm joined by Aniello Piro on here, and if you're on the radio side, you're probably thinking, Ryan, you're joining Aniello. That's just how this works. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but should be very fun. Last segment here for us, I wanted to talk about the miscues and what the Nuggets were doing on the defensive end, because it didn't feel like they were ready. And we talk about, I don't think that Michael Malone was outcoached in this one. That's not what I'm not here to push that. But for whatever reason, the Nuggets just did not perform up to their normal standard on the defensive end. And it felt like they weren't ready for a lot of what the Heat were putting out there as shooters, where they were late on closeouts. They were late recognizing just different actions. They were late reacting to the counters that the Heat were putting out there. It just felt like they were late the entire time and didn't really recognize what was going on. And then on top of that, they killed themselves over and over again by fouling. Like there's just a lot of tough things that they were doing for whatever reason. So my big question here is those are miscues, but are they correctable? Will Denver correct that?
I mean, I would hope so, because that's not the brand of basketball that we've been used to seeing from them over the course of the season. I don't know if everybody just had a bad night of sleep or they were out or whatever it was, but it just looked like a team. You just hit the nail on the head. They were just disengaged late, just playing sloppy, and just not Denver Nuggets basketball. And, the thing is, offense is a little bit, good offense sometimes beats good defense in the league today, but defense is a lot more of an effort type of dynamic, right? Like, it requires you to put a body on somebody. It requires of you to kind of think ahead. And I think that this was the type of game that it leaves that sour taste in your mouth. And I think obviously Malone's not going to let it go. He kind of ripped into them a little bit after game one as well. I do think these are correctable, issues that they can fix. We talked about Michael Porter Jr. kind of sagging off, these other guys as well. And I expect Denver to put forth the necessary effort on defense, and whether or not the shots go in because of how good Miami is at shooting the ball, that remains to be seen. But as it pertains to game two, I think a lot of those Miami looks or scoring opportunities were presented or generated off of lackadaisical defense from Denver. So I personally believe that they'll bounce back in some capacity. And I think combine that with the fact that Miami's not going to hit 50% of their threes moving forward consistently either. But obviously, we have to be in wait and see mode, because we can talk about it. It's just a matter of, seeing is believing. So we'll see if they travel well to Miami.
A good example of that lax defense in my mind, there was a sequence in that fourth quarter between Bruce Brown and Christian Brown on the left side of the court where they're trying to defend an action. It's called delay action. It's what JJ Redick made some good references to this on his pod. Bam Adebayo's at the top, and you have Duncan Robinson, I'm pretty sure, as one of the options, and then there was another Heat shooter, just like obviously in a league, whether it's Lowry, whether it's Vincent, whether it's Max Strus, doesn't matter. All those guys, you have to treat them as, hey, flashing red light, kind of right. Like, hey, you can't let those guys get open from three. And so they run this same action where they basically curl around a screen, like two of those shooters are screening for each other. Duncan Robinson curls around the screen, and Christian Brown and Bruce Brown screw up the coverage on two separate occasions. The first time Bruce Brown tries to call for a switch, Christian Brown doesn't recognize it. Wide open three-point shooter as a result in the left corner. Next time down, Bruce Brown and Christian Brown, they try to exchange that as well. Christian Brown, seeing the same action, he anticipates a switch. Bruce Brown doesn't switch this time, and then it's a wide open curl to the basket for Duncan Robinson. He finishes a layup over the top of Jeff Green on the weak side. Like clear as day miscommunication between those two guys, where one guy was doing one thing, the other guy was doing another. As a result, it's 5 easy points, and the Nuggets lost by 3. So you have to be able to tighten those things up. It's the NBA Finals, and whatever you end up deciding to do, whether it's switching or trying to stay attached, whatever, Like you can't have guys on different pages. You've got to understand that it's going to bite you.
Yeah, and I mean, I just can't believe we're even having this conversation because it's like how you just explained the switching. Like that sounds like such an early season, regular season dynamic.
It is.
And like that's where I struggle to figure out like why this happened. Malone is very intense. Malone preaches his message. Maybe it's falling on deaf ears. Like I said, maybe they were out late. I can't justify
Christian Brown, like that to me, it was a very like, because we talked about Bruce Brown and Christian Brown being pretty good in this game as a whole, and they certainly weren't the issues, but it does extend to just about everybody. It's not just the starters, like I talked about. It's not just the bench. It is everybody, and yeah. I just don't think the team was ready for it for whatever reason.
And it's just not acceptable. Like, and I know we're not playing on the team, but it's like, I mean, they've been ready in like every game up until this point. And it's like, you're at the point, like, this is what you work for. You're in the NBA finals. You're 3 wins away from being champions. And I agree. I mean, the energy that Uncle Jeff put out last night is proper. It's the fucking finals. Like just nonchalant, pissed off. Like, what the fuck, guys? Like, that's kind of like the way that he was displaying himself or, about the energy around the team. Excuse my French. I'm going to have Danny bleep that out. So I'm going to let him know.
Yeah,
that was at 44-26, Danny Bailey, for you listening back there. Apologies. But it's one of those situations where I just don't know what to make of it. And I just have to believe that they're going to look themselves in the mirror and come back and play better defensively in game 3. And I think that's the only take to have myself because we know what they're capable of. It's just a matter of doing it.
We will see whether they actually end up doing it. The last thing I want to leave out on is this. Is this a blip on the radar? Is this something that, because we just talked about, this is an abnormal occurrence for Denver? They've been prepared for these moments all the way up through this moment in the NBA Finals. But the Miami Heat, they make teams do weird things. Milwaukee was just completely out of sorts by them. New York never had a shot against Miami, even though they took them to 6. And then Boston just turned into a pumpkin over and over again and got down 3-0 as a result. They were ultimately able to force a game 7, but then they turned into a pumpkin again. So my question, like, this is just kind of what Miami does to teams in a lot of ways. Is Denver going to be able to recover from that, or is this a sign of things to come?
I think they'll recover. And look, Miami's a great team. Spoelstra's probably the best head coach right now in the NBA, if not one of the top 3 for sure. Jimmy Butler's a dog. They've got scrappy players that play for each other.
Bam Adebayo's played well too. I want to make that clear. Like in the first game, he made the shots that he was supposed to make, and it didn't really make a difference. But this one, he also made more shots and then made some good defensive plays.
Yeah,
and like he hit clutch free throws last night too. It was very, very important.
Yeah, I agree. He's been fantastic. And I just don't think it's a sign of things to come. And this is the beauty of basketball or baseball, hockey, where you have a series, right? It's not like the NFL where it's one game and you're done. I just think that this Denver team, I know that they've quote unquote lost home court advantage. They're tough to beat in a 7-game series, and I have belief that they'll be able to figure it out, steal a game or 2 on the road in Miami. I think Denver is the better team on paper and with the dynamics, more continuity, I feel like, with this team as well. And like I said, I think that this is the gut punch that they kind of needed to kind of get them back up, that bad taste in their mouth that you remember. It's been so long since Denver had kind of been beaten down like that. I mean, you go back to Phoenix, but that was on the road. They haven't lost at home in a couple of months. They hadn't lost at home until last night in the playoffs. Sometimes you got to get knocked down and get back up. And I think that's exactly what that game 2 loss was for Denver. They're the better team. They're the more talented team. Jokić is Jokić. I think Jamal doesn't play like that. I think Michael Porter Jr., gets his head on straight. And I hope the bench continues to play well. But if this team plays like we know they can, no, this is not a sign of things to come. And if they take this seriously, which they should, and recognize the moment of being in the NBA Finals, I think they bounce back and figure out a way to put their best foot forward in game 3 and beyond.
Denver had won their previous 9 home games in the playoffs. This is the first one that they've lost. This is a very abnormal thing. They've gone into every series that they've played so far up 2-0, and that's a massive, massive deal, of course, when you're trying to win playoff games and you're trying to win a series. It puts the other team in a really difficult spot. So now Denver's the team that has to have the pressure on them now. And they haven't had a ton of pressure on them, I don't think, in these playoffs, but it's the NBA Finals. This is where diamonds are made. That's what the pressure's all about, right? Like, this is how It's how this stuff generally goes. You don't want to just say that Denver had an easy road. Like they're going to have to work for it, and they have worked for it, and they will continue to have to work for it. And that's just going to be how it is. But Denver needed this wake-up call. I really do think that you're right about that, and that they weren't ready to go. And if you're not ready to go in game 3, then maybe you didn't deserve to be the champion in the first place.
I think you hit the nail on the head, and it's hard to sweep. I think the Lakers series maybe got some people, I don't want to say a little delusional, but like that's not normal, and to beat Phoenix in the manner in which they did, to beat Minnesota in the way in which they did, like it's been surprising the lack of adversity that they faced. And here's the reality. We're not talking about the 2017 Warriors. Is Denver a good team? Yes. They're not like that. They're not the 72-win Bulls, right? Where they have that pedigree. I didn't expect Denver to steamroll their way to a championship. And I think the fact that they faced as little as adversity as they did on the way, you knew it was coming at some point. And maybe it's self-inflicted with the bad play in game 2. But, Denver is going to have to work, and they're going to have to put their best foot forward. I'm confident that they do that. But in synopsis, I think it's a good gut check for them moving forward.
How many times did Michael Jordan or LeBron James sweep in the finals? Like, I don't think that they ever have.
I don't think LeBron has never. LeBron's been swept twice, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I don't think Jordan ever swept anybody, because I know he's never been to a game 7 in the NBA Finals, which is just incredible. And
that's incredible. For sure.
Great. Imagine that, never going to a game 7. It's insane. But I mean, like, I even like what are some recent champions? Like I was thinking back, like 1999, like the Spurs lost a game to the Knicks. Granted, that was in Madison Square Garden, game 3. But think back to recent memory. I mean, it's not uncommon for these teams to, like, I forget, what was the final with Milwaukee and Phoenix? Was that a 6-game series?
Yeah, it was a 6-game. And so Phoenix won the first 2, and then Milwaukee won the next 4.
Correct. You know what I mean? It's just, and I think you said it right. This is not game 5. You didn't lose game 5 at home, and now you're down 3-2, right? This is game 2, 1-1. Home court advantage is maybe a little bit nullified, but you still got 2 games ahead of you moving forward where you can kind of make up for lost ground. So
just to be clear here, Jordan he never swept. The Chicago Bulls never swept. They won each of their 96, 97, 98 series 4-2. They won against the Lakers 4-1 in 91.
The start.
That was the start of it. But then they won 4-2 and 4-2. So like they've gone to 6 games in every single series outside of the first one. So it's
even the Warriors, I think, only swept one of their finals.
Yeah, that was against LeBron, but it was also like the year that Kyrie had left. So there's a lot there. And like Denver, I think they have opportunities here to recover, to bounce back. Sometimes you need to be punched, and sometimes you need to get kicked into gear a little bit. And we're going to see. We're going to see whether that is the ultimate thing that got them in gear, or if it's the sign of them crumbling. I don't think it's that. I think they're going to get into gear, because I've seen this team throughout this entire season and really throughout their entire run here over the course of these last 5 years. Like they have what it takes. They have the juice, and we're going to find out whether they can come back from this or not.
We shall see, my friend. I'm excited for it. It's been a good time being down at the Cam with you. And I know you're on the road to Miami. I believe you leave tomorrow morning, if I remember correctly. So
I do.
You got to get me a Cuban sandwich, not for me to bring home, but just promise me you'll eat at least one Cuban sandwich, because they're delicious and nobody makes them better than down there in Miami. So enjoy it, my friend. Have a good time on the beach. Hopefully some winning basketball for the home team as well. The home team is in Denver, not the Miami.
We will see. We got it. We got to take the show on the road, and going to have some great content out there, no doubt in my mind. But I'm looking forward to the experience, and I really appreciate Mile High Sports for sending me out, of course. Great stuff from us here. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening on Aniello and Cody, and on the YouTube side of things, and on the audio side of things, where you can find Pickaxe and Roll wherever you get your podcasts. For Aniello and myself, we really appreciate all of y'all. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. Appreciate all the love and support. As always, we'll talk to you guys very soon.